Hey everyone, it's Kayvon with Ascari Art. So I wanted to do another painting demo because I know that people have been asking me for it, and I think it would be good to show some new techniques and my mindset as I paint. I've got a new camera, so this will help in showing the resolution and the crispness of the detail. And also, it's been a while since I've done a smaller painting demo, and it would be a good practice for me because I want to try some new techniques. So first things first, the materials that I'm using plastic poster board. This you can purchase from any crafts place, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, that's in the States, and anywhere else around the world. You just need to look for something that is plastic in nature, that is not porous like paper would be. Now you could use Yupo, but since this is for practice, I don't like to go with Yupo because it's too expensive when it comes to just practicing unless you have the budget. I typically paint my professional stuff on canvas and linen. So, but for practice, I always have a stack of these plastic poster board material that I cut in smaller pieces and I practice a technique on it. So hopefully that helps. The other thing that I like to use is this Giotto rocket. It's actually a lens cleaner. I've been using this in a lot of my videos and even my first video. And so this comes in handy. I'm using 99% isopropyl alcohol that you can purchase on Amazon. I have roughly about 4 gallons of it, and I just, for about $130 in the States again. And I just refill this container with it so it helps. And for the colors, I typically use Tim Holtz, Copic, Pinata. I have a lot of brands that I typically use. For this particular brand, we're gonna do a little experiment. So as a beginner, if you're starting off doing alcohol inks, I recommend sticking with 2 to 3 colors max. I do not recommend you going over that because what it does is it adds a lot of confusion. And if you're not familiar with color theory or color, and especially color theory, sometimes goes out the window when you're dealing with alcohol inks because of the underlying tones and hues that some alcohol inks provide. Like you look at this pitch black and you can see there's like blue areas in here and pink areas that are coming out. And I'm not sure if you can tell, but you know, so it's not really black. It's all the colors combined to make black. And so, and as you're using alcohol to lift it, you're going to see some of those underlying colors. So that's why I'm recommending you sticking to 2 colors as you're painting, and maybe do a metallic like a gold or silver or something like that if you want to do some accent lines. And I'll show you how to do that. The other thing I'm going to be using is a brush. So I'm going to use just a standard brush that I have, and I'm going to show you how to use draw some lines with it and move the ink with this brush. The other thing I'm going to do that's interesting is, since we're doing 2 colors and we're going to add a metallic, we're going to pick a random color out of the swatches that I have. So now these swatches can be found on my website, ascariart.com/blog. You go to that, you go down to the older posts, and I used to do a video every, I don't know, I think it was a week, and I would do a set of new colors every week, and I would scan these swatches out and put them on my website for free for you to download. You don't have to, you know, give me your email address or anything to download them. They're free for anyone. But it's a good reference point because these swatches actually show a lot of undertone of the colors. And I have the name of the color and the brand of the color next to it, so you can really see what the color does. Or you can go to my YouTube channel, go to the older videos, and you can see me making these swatches. So it'll show you my thought process, some of the colors that come out of it. Hopefully that helps you as well. And you can see some of the techniques I use. So hopefully that helps. So what we're going to do here is a little different than I typically do. Sometimes I have my wife pick out colors, sometimes I pick out colors randomly, but this time, or pick out colors and then say these are the colors we're going to do. So this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip these over and just randomly pick a color, a secondary color, and then we're just going to go with that. Ooh, it's okay. No, we're not going to do that. Let's pick a different color. I don't like that color at all for a secondary color. Okay, what is this? This is blue-green, and it's actually more green than it is blue. You can't really see it in the color in the camera. So okay, so these are the two colors we're gonna do. It's a blue-green with a black. Okay, okay. So hopefully I have my, so this is going to be awkward because I have the camera in a weird situation and in a weird point. And so it's hard for me. It's kind of facing the camera more so I'm working at a diagonal. So it's a little different. So the camera is typically where I'm sitting. That's where the camera is. Where I would be standing to paint is where the camera is, and I'm kind of catty corner to it. So here are the two colors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the blue, this blue-green color, I need to find it, but this blue-green color needs to be my primary, and I'm going to use this black as the accent because the black is going to have higher pigment. So let's put these aside, and I will pull that blue-green color. Blue-green. So now the blue-green color is from Copic. Here's the Copic blue. It is a blue-green BG09, and I'll have this in my Amazon shop list. You can always, go to it and just buy it from there if you have Amazon access. And then pitch black. So these two, I'm going to be able to use these. And let's get started. Enough talk. Let's just do art. I'm getting some cups right now. So I use these little plastic cups, and I fill them up with alcohol. And I use a dropper to pour the alcohol on and move it around. I keep my inks, my brush in there as well. So all I'm doing is just filling it in. Okay, and I leave one cup empty because that's where I can put my brush in. And I'm gonna basically dip this brush, wet it down a bit, okay? Put this aside. Hopefully you can see the cup. There we go. And let's get started. So now there's a couple of ways to lay down the ink. You can either lay down the ink first, or you can put some alcohol down and then lay the ink down. So there's two options. Now, if you're planning on doing a thick coat of ink, I would recommend possibly, you can do either way. It's different things for different ways. The only problem is when you do the ink only first, sometimes it's difficult to lift, and that becomes an issue. So, and I'll show you both ways. So we're gonna use this, we're gonna lay down the alcohol down. If you can see it, let me turn down the light a bit. All right, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put down some alcohol first, and I'm just gonna kind of like move it around. Don't be afraid, all right? So this is just practice. Again, if you have that mindset, everything will be okay. Nothing's gonna happen here. We're just practicing. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna draw a line with it, okay? And I'm gonna use my little, you can use a blow dryer, but since this is small, I'm gonna use this and this little Giotto, and I'm gonna move it around to where I like it. So this color is so beautiful. It actually has an undertone of a blue-green, like the name, surprisingly. Not all alcohol inks are the color of what the name is, but this particular alcohol ink is. So I love to feather the ends a bit and just let the alcohol dry. And sometimes I'll go in there and manipulate it, but I always go manipulate it because it's not sometimes, I always do. It's just, I want to have a little bit more control in how the ink moves. So now you can use now as I'm doing this, I'm thinking of composition, I'm looking at where my shapes, my colors are ending, and I'm not just looking at one section. I'm looking at the whole thing in general. Now, on a smaller piece like this, it's a lot easier because it's smaller and you can focus on it. On a larger piece, sometimes you have to step back and look at it. Now, we're gonna do that, and then while we do that, we're gonna let that dry slightly, and I'm gonna bring in the blow dryer. And so for the blow dryer, what I like to do is I'm gonna keep it on cool because I don't wanna add any kind of heat to this. And there's typically a diffuser that you can get, and this gives you a different effect than that little Giotto that I had. So this is on low and it's pretty strong. All right. So as you can see here, you can kind of slightly see these little bumps that I don't like over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to add alcohol and move those. Those are like bumps, and then if you push the alcohol past the ridge, then they become fingers. And let me check something really quick. I need to get a brush, and I need to get, all right, so let's go back in. So again, don't be afraid. We're gonna add a little bit of ink, alcohol there, and move the alcohol around so that it breaks that line up. And you may look at it and go, oh, you just ruined it. You have all these spray marks all over it. I'm not worried about that because this is practice. And sometimes beautiful things happen from little accidents. I'm beginning to sound like Bob Ross. Oh, gosh. He's a huge inspiration of mine. I've mentioned that before. As a kid, I used to sit there, 4-year-old. I was 4 when I was watching his shows on PBS, and I would literally try to do his paintings, the stuff he did as a 4-year-old with, elementary school watercolors. I've always had, and my mom encouraged it, and then Sesame Street would start because Bob Ross was typically earlier in the morning. Or actually, no, it was in the middle. It was kind of like 10 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock is what I remember, but I was very young. So, okay, we're going to let this dry, and then now we're going to go in with the black. And I'm not afraid to, don't be afraid again to add some, but remember what I said, I'm going to make this my secondary. So I'm going to go in and add there some here, and maybe right there. Okay, so that's it. So since black is such a, it's a very strong color, you notice I didn't add alcohol this time. I put it down first, and then I'm adding alcohol to it. So I can show you what it does. Now this poster board is not 100% even, and that's my fault. I should have flattened it out a bit, but it's okay. For general practice uses, it's all right. So now what we're doing is this pitch black, based on the swatch that I have, has blue undertones. And you can see that in this. You'll be able to see it in a minute. You see the blue, it's coming out right here. You'll be able to see it. So it's not really black, it's like it is black, but once you thin it down with alcohol, it becomes its own, it has its own color. And see where I left it right here, I don't know if you can see, but it leaves a residue because I put the ink down first without adding the alcohol. The alcohol tends to have a coat between the paper or the poster board and so remember I don't know if you've seen some paintings where it has lines that are perfect lines. People think that sometimes those lines are achieved by brushes. The lines are actually too perfect to be achieved by brush. So what it is that it's actually drying the ink in a very slow manner and then just like pushing it right before it dries. You can move it and then it does those lines. So you see, hold on, let me see if I can do it with this little Giotto. Typically you can do it with, I did it right here. Typically you can do it with a blow dryer because it's more even, and it's a larger surface area. Let's see if I can do that here. So just typically I'm moving it around. You see how it's kind of starting to make those lines? See that? But you just have to do it when it's drying. So you have to keep going back and forth till it dries. And you got to know when to stop because it tends to, like, if you go past the ridge line of where the alcohol is, then it starts making those fingers, and then you got to go back and add the alcohol to move that out or smooth it out. I like to smooth it out because that's just me. I don't like harsh lines on the edges of my alcohol. I like to feather it out. So you see what I'm doing here? I'm just drawing it down slowly. And you see how the lines are happening right here? And it's just pulling it from a distance, drawing it from a distance. Moving it back and forth, back and forth. And that's what gives you those lines. Now you can create those lines with a brush, but it's never perfect. It's never as perfect as letting the alcohol dry and leave a residue behind. Okay, so we're not done yet. I'm going to go in and add, so again, I'm looking at this compositionally. I love this area. This is so soft and smooth and soothing. This is the rough, rugged edge. So we're going to soften this up a bit. So I'm going to add a little bit more blue because that blue turned into this blue-green. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit more ink, but I'm going to come in from this side. And I'm just going to let the alcohol melt this ink away. And that's where you get these beautiful pieces. You just got to let it melt away. That's the idea. Let the alcohol lift the ink off and it softens it, and just let it do its thing. Sometimes it's, as you're learning, sometimes it's better for you to just let it move on its own and not move it as much. For me, I mean, since I've had roughly about 5.5 years of doing alcohol ink paintings on different types of mediums, doing resin work, with my traditional, art background, I kind of get an idea of what I want and what I like. So I guess I'm just a little different. So the other thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to go in and soften this edge up here, but I'm going to push it this way, all right? Because I'm looking at it again from a compositional standpoint. My dropper wasn't that good. I didn't push the ink as much as I wanted, but it's okay. So we're going to push this and let it melt again. Let's not let the ink, I don't want the ink to collect on the edges, so I'm going to push it back to soften it up. Okay, I like that. I'm going to let it dry a bit. I like this curve, it's really pretty. So once it dries, it starts leaving layers behind as it dries back. And now what we're going to do, I'm going to use that black. And I'm looking at this, I've got black over here, which turned grayish, metallic, orange, red. I've got my beautiful blue. Don't be afraid to change this. If you don't, you can lift this whole thing and wipe it down if you want it. That's the advantage of practice. So I want to try to play with this area here. Now I know it's going to affect this. I know it will. So I'm not worried though, because again, this is practice. So we're going to add the black there. And I'm going to add some ink. And I'm going to try to push the ink that way without it getting in the way of the rest. There we go. And you just got to quickly get your air gun or your Giotto little rocket. And you can see the undertones that are happening here. Now, sometimes we can push the ink back into the old area that I had. Sometimes you can bring the alcohol back in where you liked and disliked it. So you're basically painting with air at this point. You can use an airbrush, but I would not recommend it right now because you're practicing, you're getting acquainted with just moving the ink with air, so. And if you want to use a blow dryer, what I typically do is on a blow dryer, it's too strong, so you can either cap the top or you can buy a diffuser that they use for drying hair, but it's just, I guess, or combing hair. And what it does is it diffuses the air and slows the air down. That was a subscriber actually told me about that. She's a hair salonist. I don't know if that's the right term, but she used to do hair, and for like 20 years or something, she told me about that, and I thought, wow, that's kind of cool. I didn't know that. Thank you. So any tips, I'm always learning as well. So, and that's the idea, right? Where I'm trying to help others who are starting this journey. And you see how I do that, and it's making the lines, it's drawing it fast enough, and it's making those lines that people like so much. You can do it with hot, and I'll do it with hot as well. All right, so the other thing I'm going to do here is let's soften this area up. I want to brush this out. I want to make it soft. So you can push it out off the page and bring it back in and then push it off, bring it back in, push it out. And then that'll soften that edge up. And then we need to, from a composition standpoint, so I am working at a diagonal on this. It's not easy from an angle that I'm at, but hopefully this helps you see what I'm kind of doing and helps you push and motivates you, inspires you to actually paint. And that's the idea, you know, we're in these weird times where we need a way, an outlet, and this is a very good outlet. It's very calming, and hopefully that makes you want to paint, or this video helps you decide that you want to try this. And alcohol inks are not expensive. So I wanted to do this so you can kind of see. So you see how like I'm pushing this out right here and it's like all these fingers. Don't worry about that. You're pushing the ink basically past its limit, past where the alcohol is. And all you do is you can just put alcohol back down on that area and push it back. Now it's not going to be exactly as desirable. You may not want it, or you may like it. I don't like it personally, so I try to move them around and soften it up because it's just me. I like the feathered look. Just that's my preference. So since this paper is not the flattest, it's literally lifting the ink, and that's okay. Add a couple drops there so we can start anew. And a couple drops right there, and just let it move it. Can't be afraid to mix the colors, because you know I have a color theory goes out the window with alcohol inks in a way, because you think you're starting with one color and the ink just presents something completely different as you're painting. So you have to problem solve as you're going through this. Okay, so I like that. So we're gonna see if we can cool this down or dry it down faster. Kind of soften. Again, you can achieve this. You can achieve this look with that little Giotto, but some of the things I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to show that it's harder to do with the Giotto, even though this is a smaller area. Okay, I'll leave that on for a second. All right, so I'm gonna let this dry because I kind of like what's happening here. I don't know if you can see it. Let's see if I can do this and zoom in a bit. That's the most I can do right now. So hopefully you can see that. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I do the brush technique. So it depends on the thickness of the brush. I'm using this particular thickness. You can go lighter, you can go darker. And you can do different things with the brush. Now the brush gives you a lot more control than you think. Let me get a thinner brush because of the lines that I want to create. I just want that fine, thin line. So I'm going to use this one. This is a little better. I can't find my other thin one. It's probably somewhere around here. Okay. So let me see if you can see this. So I'm going to look at this and say, okay, I don't like this line. I'm going to create, I'm going to start moving the ink, putting ink down. in this area. And now this works a lot better with canvas because canvas is a little bit more porous, but this gives you an idea of what I'm doing. So this is my thing that I like doing. It's kind of like my signature. I like to do these like fine cracks. As you can see here, I'm pulling that back. And I like the fact that they are not perfect. And I tend to use a blow dryer, but since this is much smaller, again, I'm not worried about messing this up, and you shouldn't be either. This is just practice. You're learning as you go. Make sure you load it with alcohol and you draw. So right now I'm just looking at it compositionally and I'm like, okay, I like this, I like that. So I'm going to soften this up. You see how I'm just brushing this out and kind of softening it. If you don't like something, you can completely wipe it away. So like if I don't like that area, I can just completely wipe it, add more ink, and stretch that out. So I've added that area, so I'm going to come in here and start defining my lines. So I'm pushing the ink back and forth. So see how it's creating these fingers, but I'm not worried because I'm going to come in there again with the finer brush. Hopefully you can see this. So you're playing with this. You're playing, you're enjoying. This should not be stressful unless you're some like weird, I'm not going to say weird because I'm weird. Unless you're like a perfectionist and you got to let that go because I'm a perfectionist, a high perfectionist. And this allows me to let go. And sometimes I try to get, try to do something to control it. And I do control it sometimes, but there's others where you have to let the ink do its thing. And I hope you can see this. So I'm just literally just drawing my lines where I like it. So I see this existing line here. I'm going to go through it and just draw my line and pull it back and forth to make the definitions. I'm just brushing. Now, with the ink, if you're seeing that you're having trouble with it, so I'm left-handed, so it's a little difficult. I'm trying to be on camera and show you what I'm doing, and do this at the same time. So if you want to make these lines better, you can always draw over the line or next to the line, and what that'll do is it'll leave an imprint of where you left off, and it kind of like, you can kind of see it as I'm doing it. But so I'm kind of just, I like to soften areas up. And define other lines, other areas. All right, so now the tricky part. So I can go in and I'm going to define these lines and do it and then add gold, or I can add gold as I'm painting, or I can add gold after I'm done with a brush. So if you want gold, so I like the way this looks. I can show you. Let me just do it. I'll add gold in certain areas and leave other areas exposed. I'll show you. I'm using, for my gold, I'm very proud of this Pinata brass. I love this gold. It's beautiful. We're going to mix it to the ball. You can hear the ball in it. And it's called Pinata brass. It's actually a better gold than the Pinata gold, in my opinion. It looks better. It looks closer to gold. And let me get my dropper. Now, I have several droppers that... I have a dropper that's specifically for this gold. And what we're going to do is I'm not going to add a lot because I just want to show you what it does. I'm going to add some gold here and then maybe here. And now we're going to try to move it. So this gold will move to a certain amount and then it stops. So make sure you add your ink, your alcohol, sorry, to it to keep it fluid, because then it starts breaking up and then it becomes more of a texture. And this is like, for this piece originally, like if this was like some cool painting that I wanted to hang up or something and it was on canvas, I probably wouldn't have added the gold, only because I was done with it. But in most cases, I think it's a really nice accent. And you notice that it's sitting on top, so it's not, and you can't forget about the other areas. So you want to make sure that you go in and move the gold to where you want it. Because then the gold is interesting because it's not the standard like alcohol ink. It kind of sits on, the metallic sits on top. I just want to move it where I want it, and then I'm going to go in and brush it again. I don't want it to collect the same spot. Now, so the brushwork, I did the brushwork a little early. I would have done the brushwork after I added the gold, but since I decided to show y'all how I add golds, so just to give you heads up, I would have done the brushwork at the final stage to just kind of add my finishing details. But just for this demo, it's good to just kind of show you. I'm just doing it just so I can show you guys. Show y'all. I can't believe I use y'all. We're from Texas, not from California. I did get someone asking me if I was from San Francisco because it does say I'm from Frisco. That's Frisco, Texas. Used to be the largest growing city in the United States. Probably not so much anymore. It's still maybe, I don't know actually. I'll go look back up. But so you notice I'm just kind of trying to move this around. Let me use my blow dryer again. Hopefully you can see this. See how the gold, it's not sitting on top anymore, unless if I push it out and push it to the edge, it will. And it's the look that you're looking for, right? It's the look. Do you want it to be spread, or do you want it to be collected on like fine lines? You see? I kind of want both in this one. So I'm just kind of drawing it as I go to see if I can get it to collect in the middle over here. Okay. There we go. I don't know if you can see this. It's got the gold in there. So now, as the final step, I'm going to start drawing the lines. Like, so this should have happened after, but, or some of you may say, oh, well, you're done. Why are you messing it up? Well, it's not really messing it up. I'm practicing, right? This is practice. This is to show y'all that there's different ways of doing things, and you can actually lift the gold with the brush. So I can go in there and do this line here and push the gold, like move it. As long as your brush is loaded, you'll be able to do that and lift the gold with the brush, so you can get some really cool, like bring it back to the top. You see? Make very fine lines, move the alcohol where you like it. Again, I don't know if a lot of people use the brush. I do, because that's just, you know, that's just my thing, because it gives me a little bit more control in the medium. I don't like just pouring it and letting it do its thing and move the canvas around to get it to look, you know, it's too much of haps in my opinion, and that's okay. I'm not saying that's wrong. There's no wrong way to do art. It's just not me, so I just like to have a little bit more control and intent in what I create, and not saying that, again, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and not saying that it's not that artist's intent to just move the canvas around and make something happen. So again, I hope I don't hurt anybody's feelings. I'm just saying it's just not my thing. I like to use the brush. I think it gives me this visceral feel of you know, making this piece. So as you can see, I'm just going in, following some of the lines. See how I'm pushing the ink? I can't see, I don't know if you can see this. Loading the brush, going in and doing that again. Now, the cool thing about this Giotto rocket is it gives you a lot of control in a small area. Especially if you're doing small paintings like this really helps. Or if you're doing big paintings and you want just a little bit of detail on a certain small area and you don't want to like move the whole thing around, you just want to focus on one little small area, this Giotto is awesome. Shout out to anybody who works for Giotto or any kind of camera equipment company that wants to sponsor an alcohol ink artist. I doubt that'll happen, but throwing it out in the universe. I actually deal with camera equipment. That's my other life. So again, you notice I'm going all over the place. I'm not sticking to one place. I'm not sticking to one area. I'm moving it around. It's kind of like sometimes you're afraid to move it and you're like, oh, I love this. You know, I don't want to mess it up. Don't be afraid to mess it up. That you can't. Look, it's becoming even prettier than it was. And besides, if you mess it up, if you feel like you don't like it, put ink back down. I mean, you can put ink back down. You can put alcohol back down. Like if you don't like some of these areas that I'm doing, it's preference, right? This is for you. This is for your calming nature and your experience. You're gaining experience every time you do this. So I read something that I think it was on one of the posts that I saw. It said that Pablo Picasso, famous artist, he didn't die poor. He was actually very rich. He did 50,000 paintings in his lifetime. 50,000 paintings. And guess what? Out of the 50,000, only 1% of them are known to be famous artworks that are regarded as some of the most interesting and innovative of its time. And so, again, that's practice. 50,000 paintings and only 1%. Now, that's if your goal is to be a famous artist. You gotta paint. You gotta paint. You gotta practice. And that's his practice. That's what he did. So, if you want to be famous artists, you gotta practice. And I say that, and I don't do enough. I need to keep practicing because these videos take more time than... I try to video them so you can learn from my experience, but I need to do more as well. Adding the ink. Trying to make it where it feels more seamless and not as brushed. And that's sometimes harder than it looks, especially with inks. Okay, so I did this. I think I'm done with that. I may go in, I don't like some of the like straight, so I'm gonna go in and change the direction a bit. If you don't like something, you can just go in and add ink, I'm sorry, alcohol to it, or ink, and just make it yours, right? Okay, so now I'm gonna straighten this out a little. You could use a blow dryer here. I'm just breaking this ink up and moving it to my liking. But as I do this, I need to add more so that I can see how I'm softening it, adding more, going in. Leaving certain areas. Layering it. It's kind of like you're layering multiple, just doing layer over layer, softening, pushing lines, making definitions of areas of lines, and then leaving other areas soft. I mean, see how I soften this? That's just, hopefully you can see this. You don't have to, you could dry brush it a bit, like add areas if you want to add fine lines. I'm trying to show you on camera as well as I do this. Dry brushing at this point, just kind of following. So sometimes you have to go in and clean your alcohol out or pour a new cup of alcohol, because then it starts retaining the color, especially if you're trying to move different colors around. You don't want to use, like, if I was using pink, for example, I would use a different cup for the pink so that it doesn't mix with the blue in the areas that I want the blue and the areas that I want the pink, you know? I'm not going to say this is easy, but you learn as you go, you know? So this is how I add detail to my paintings, and hopefully this helps. And I'm going to go in and, like, these areas right here, I don't know if you can see it, this area, this gold is kind of doing some weird things, so I'm going to lift it with my brush. I'm going to add more ink and lift. And see if I can even lift it. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes the ink will let you. I love this area. I may leave it, I may not, I don't know. Again, it so I'm running the brush. I'm running the brush on there, but also, uh-oh, I did some splatters there. But I'm also, like, controlling it with the air to give me that swooshy, feathery look. Hopefully you can see that. All right. Yeah, I'm working right here, so it's kind of difficult. Maybe I move it up so you can see. And in order for you to fade it, you have to push it over where the ink is, the alcohol, and then push it back out to fade it. I don't know if that makes any sense. I hope it does. Okay, so Now, I'm going to try to see if I can do this, if I could fix that somehow. I may have to play with this area and then end it around here. Continuation of this line. So I think I'm almost done. I think I'm just going to add a little bit more lightness to this area because I like the, again, I'm loading my brush. So if I don't like a certain area like this concentrate over here, I'm going to push it out and add more ink or play, like if it's too light, again, don't be afraid. There we go. So I'm going to let it dry a little bit. Okay. Let's see, so on camera, this is what you kind of see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play with this line and define this line. So this is where the ink, you need to add more alcohol. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to add a couple of drops so I can show you how it would now move the ink after it's dropped. I'm not using a lot of alcohol at this point. Some lines. Okay, so let's say this is done, and I'm looking at it, I'm going, okay, so there's some dirty areas here I don't like, you know, there's areas down here that I don't like. Let me see if I can zoom out so you can kind of see. Okay, and then I'm gonna increase it just a bit. Hopefully you can see that. So I'm looking at this, I'm like, wow, that's pretty. It's got some really nice sheen and some gold. I don't know if you can see that. And I wanted to show you something. So let's say hypothetically, I'm like, okay, you know, I don't like this edge. Like, you can either have it cut to where you want it, or if you don't have that option, just get a paper towel and that was my last piece of paper towel, and then just soak it with some alcohol And you can do this on canvas too, by the way. So this works on canvas as well. And you can just wipe it down and just kind of fade it out. These are tips and tricks that people don't, I don't know, some inks don't, alcohol guys, people don't show you. And then you go in and just move the ink back in. See how I'm softening those edges? Like even here, if I don't like this edge, I'm just gonna get rid of it with a paper towel. Big deal, right? I mean, and then push it back in. But just make sure your paper towel is clean when you do this. You don't want any kind of weird residue. You can add more ink, or alcohol, sorry, and go in there and say, look, I don't like this area. I'm just gonna push it out and fade it. And you know, so I have this like little, and maybe it's, you know, I like a clean, white, clean area around it because this is pretty. So like the idea is for you to think about composition, and by moving it around, you are thinking about composition. This is the composition. So, you know, like I love some of the soft stuff that's happening. You know, I'm going to clean some of the splatters out here. You see there's some splatter. And again, this is practice. So you're learning technique, you're learning what you can and can't do. Again, just to prove to you that I don't consider this like, I know it's pretty, but if you want to change this and you want to practice, go right ahead, like move it around. Don't be afraid to experiment. See? I'm not tied to it, and that's the idea. You're not, don't tie yourself, don't consider it a masterpiece, consider it a practice piece. And that will set you free and let you do things that you didn't think would come out of it, you know? So now I can move this around, soften it up. It's always about the intent. Is the intent of this for me to make a masterpiece, or is the intent of this for me to learn a new technique, new way to move the ink, a new way to figure out how the gold reacts, add to my experience or my repertoire in how I move this ink around and how I work with it. So hopefully you've learned from this experience. You know, I hope you've gained something from this. And this is, you know, I hope it's been a good learning experience for you. So if you haven't done so, please, please, please subscribe. Leave a comment. Let me know how I'm helping you. Let me know what I've done and if this is helping you. And if you'd like to see more, please let me know. So we're going to let this dry. I'm just going to keep moving it around, kind of just to show you that, you know, not afraid. Don't be afraid. If you want to add more lines while this is drying, you can. You can add brush lines as the alcohol is moving, so you can set your defined areas of where you want the alcohol to actually go. See, when I do the brush over while it's drying, it kind of moves the alcohol. It allows the ink to go where I'm drawing the lines. And if you don't like those fingers, don't worry, just draw over it. So there you are. And there you have it. That is it. And I'm just going to kind of clean this up, soften it. Like, see, you can inch it in, put more ink down to define even more so of a line. I keep going with this. I just want you to see as much as possible with this so you can see my technique. So again, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. That would really help me, motivate me to do even more of these demos. I'm thinking about doing a demo painting every 3 or 4 days. Let me know what you think about that, if that's worth doing, if that's really helping you. So again, Kayvon Ascari with Ascari Art. I hope you've enjoyed it. and take care to the next one. This time, on the next one, help me pick out a different color. You know, let's pick out one of the swatches that I have. Go to my website, check out all the swatches that I've made, and then let me know what you think. Let's pick some crazy colors and do some swatches. You know, do some paintings from those swatches. 2 colors, because that helps others. Maybe 3. So, all right. Well, here you go. I'll post detailed pictures of this on my blog, and you can go from there. All right. Thanks, everyone, or in the community. Thanks. Take care.